I saw her on a TV show, and I had never seen her before, and I said, that's it. I said, whoever she is, I'm going to go with it. I'm going to take a chance.
Robert Redford, a name synonymous with Hollywood legends, stood as one of the most iconic figures in the entertainment industry. His face graced the silver screen for decades, immortalizing characters that ranged from the mischievous gambler in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid to the suave director behind the camera in Ordinary People. His influence was undeniable, his legacy etched in the very fabric of American cinema. But now, as the world faced his final days, a question lingered in the air. What does a legend wish for when the end is near? Just weeks before his passing, Robert made a request that would take everyone by surprise. This wasn't just a matter of last rites or final moments, but something deeper, a final wish that echoed his character, his strength, and his undying passion for life. A request so powerful and poignant that even his family didn't fully understand it at first. And in the midst of all of this, there was one person who knew exactly what to do. Amy Redford, his daughter. Her role in this deeply personal journey was not just as a daughter, but as the keeper of his final wish. The story of Robert Redford's last request is one that will linger in the hearts of his family, his fans, and all who admired him. But, to truly understand it, we have to go back to the man, the actor, the father, and the legend. As Robert Redford's health slowly deteriorated, the world around him seemed to fade into a quiet, somber rhythm. The once vibrant energy that had radiated from him on screen and behind the camera, now dimmed by age and illness. Parkinson's disease had taken its toll, stealing away the vitality that had defined much of his career. Despite his lifelong tenacity, this was a battle he couldn't win. But even as his body failed him, Robert's spirit remained as strong as ever. The final weeks of his life unfolded in the peaceful, familiar surroundings of his Utah estate. The house, usually filled with the hum of activity, stood still. A soft breeze whispered through the windows. But inside, time seemed to move more slowly, as if the world was waiting, holding its breath for the inevitable. Yet even as his health waned, Robert remained a presence, his mind still sharp, his wit still intact. Amy Redford, Robert's daughter, stood beside him every day. She had always been a constant in his life, but now her role had shifted. The tables had turned, and it was Amy who had become his caretaker, his comfort, and his strength. Her father's once commanding presence, on set and in life, had now given way to quiet vulnerability. His body, once capable of performing incredible feats, now required assistance for the simplest of tasks. But through it all, Robert's essence remained unchanged. He was still Robert Redford, a man who had shaped the world with his talent and willpower. In those final weeks, Robert didn't speak much. Parkinson's had robbed him of much of his ability to communicate. But when he did, it was with the same self-assuredness that had made him a star. His conversations would drift between memories of his childhood in Santa Monica and his early struggles in the film industry. He spoke of his films, the people he worked with, and, most of all, his family. Amy, ever the watchful daughter, listened as her father spoke in soft, measured tones, his voice fragile but still filled with the intensity that had once commanded entire rooms. The man who had once graced the world's most prestigious stages now sat quietly in his favorite chair, watching the world go by through the windows. The weight of his experiences, the ups and downs, the triumphs and failures, all seemed to settle in that silence. And yet, even in those hushed moments, Amy saw glimpses of the man who had always been larger than life. She saw the twinkle in his eye when he spoke of his children and how he took comfort in their presence. It was these moments, these subtle, tender exchanges, that defined their relationship in those final days. Amy wasn't just there as a daughter, she was the keeper of his stories, the holder of his legacy. But despite his fragility, Robert Redford wasn't ready to go quietly into the night. As much as his body betrayed him, his heart and mind were still set on something more, something that would define his final days and leave an indelible mark on his family's heart. And so, the conversation turned to something unexpected, Robert's final wish. What could a man like him, who had achieved so much, possibly want in his last days? The answer would come soon enough, and it would take his family and his daughter Amy on an emotional journey that none of them could have predicted. As Robert Redford's time grew shorter, his family gathered around him, often in hushed conversations, filled with the weight of impending loss. Yet, It was in one of these moments that Robert made his most surprising request, one that left even those closest to him in stunned silence. "Promise me," Robert whispered to Sharon, his voice frail, yet still carrying that unmistakable intensity. "Promise me they'll remember the fire, not the flicker." Sharon, always by his side through decades of chaos and triumph, had heard Robert's unspoken wishes many times before, but this request felt different. There was something haunting about it, a plea wrapped in defiance, as if Robert was fighting against his body's betrayal, clinging to the one thing that had defined his very essence, his ability to roar, to shine, to leave a legacy not just of a man, but of a force of nature. It wasn't about fading into the quiet comfort of a peaceful passing, but about roaring one last time. Amy Redford, who had been witnessing this transformation in her father, didn't need to be told twice. She understood what he meant. The flicker he referred to was not just his declining health, but the idea of being remembered as someone whose light had faded before his time. Robert had lived his life in full, with passion and rebellion, and he didn't want to be reduced to a mere shadow of himself at the end. He wanted to go out with the same fire that had ignited his legendary career, that same boldness that had made him an icon. "One last performance," he had said, "where it all began." The request was as simple as it was extraordinary. Robert, now a man whose body could barely lift itself out of a chair, wanted one final moment in the spotlight. He wanted to stand, or in his case, sit, before the world, with his voice still commanding the stage, the same voice that had once filled arenas and echoed through the hearts of millions. He didn't want to be remembered for his frailty. He wanted to be remembered for his strength, his fire, his unstoppable will to perform. The world was going to see him one last time, not as an old man in a wheelchair, but as the rock star, the legend, the icon that he had always been. The request shocked everyone, including Amy. But as she looked at her father, she knew she had no choice but to fulfill it. She had seen his determination in the toughest of times, through addiction, through relapses, through the loss of his career, and yet he had always risen again. This time, though, the stakes were higher. The battle wasn't against the world or his demons, it was against his own body. But Amy had witnessed the depth of her father's spirit and knew that giving him this final wish was not only a matter of honoring his legacy, but also giving him the chance to say goodbye on his own terms, as the man he had always been. No one in the family questioned the importance of this wish. It was raw, it was real, and for Robert, it was a chance to reclaim his power, even in the face of the inevitable. And so, Amy's journey began, one that would take her down an emotional and challenging path to make her father's dying wish a reality. She was about to embark on a mission that would require every ounce of strength, perseverance, and love she could muster. But this, she knew, was the final gift she could give her father, allowing him to leave this world the way he had lived it, loud, proud, and unforgettable. Amy Redford, like so many daughters before her, had spent her life watching her father transform from a Hollywood icon into a quiet, reflective man in the twilight of his years. But in those final moments, she was faced with a task that went beyond the everyday duties of a daughter. This was no ordinary request. It was the final wish of a legend, one that would demand her strength, determination, and resilience. She wasn't just honoring her father's legacy. She was about to fight for it, for his right to leave this world in the way he had lived it, boldly, unapologetically, and fiercely. The idea of fulfilling Robert's wish, to give him one last performance, seemed almost impossible. His body was failing him, and his health had deteriorated rapidly. Parkinson's had stripped him of the physical abilities that had once allowed him to command a stage. His once powerful voice, which had carried over arenas filled with adoring fans, now struggled to rise above a whisper. His hands, which had once wielded a guitar like an extension of his own soul, now trembled with the ravages of the disease. But Robert's heart and mind remained undaunted. For Amy, the task ahead was overwhelming. She had watched her father battle with addiction, overcome personal demons, and triumph over health crises in the past. But this was different. This wasn't just another fight for survival. This was the final chapter, and Amy knew she had to make it count. The first step was securing the impossible. A final performance, with Robert at its center. She had no idea how to pull it off, but she knew one thing: it had to happen. She reached out to the closest people to her father, the people who had helped him build his legacy. She contacted the musicians, the crew members, and those who had worked with him for decades. Each call was met with disbelief, but also with a deep understanding of what this meant. Amy had to navigate a labyrinth of logistics, medical hurdles, and doubts from both family and friends who feared for her father's health. Doctors were adamant that the performance could kill him. Some said it was too dangerous, that it would be a foolish risk to put him through the stress. But Amy, unwavering in her commitment to honoring her father's wish, pushed forward. She worked tirelessly to get the right medical clearance, carefully crafting a plan that would allow Robert to perform under strict supervision, with every possible precaution taken. But it wasn't just the practical aspects of the performance that Amy had to contend with. There were emotional hurdles too. As his daughter, she had to balance the line between respecting her father's wishes and protecting him from harm. But Amy knew that this was what her father wanted, his final chance to reclaim his power, his legacy, and his place in history. She worked around the clock, negotiating with managers, consulting with doctors, and coordinating the details of what would become one of the most monumental performances of her father's life. For Amy, it wasn't just about the music. It was about giving her father the dignity to leave this world on his own terms. Every decision, every conversation, every step she took was guided by one simple thought. This is for him. This is his final wish. I have to make it happen. And so, she did. What seemed impossible slowly started to take shape, a testament to Amy's love for her father and her determination to fulfill his dream, no matter the cost. The Redford family, while public figures in their own right, had always maintained a sense of privacy that protected the inner workings of their bond. Robert, a man who had faced the scrutiny of the media for decades, found solace in the quiet moments with his children, especially his daughter, Amy. Their relationship was one of deep understanding and quiet strength, the kind that only comes with time and shared experiences. Robert's relationship with his children was a testament to his complexities as a father. He wasn't always the picture-perfect dad. He had made mistakes, had fallen short at times, but in the end, his children knew that his love for them was fierce and unshakable. Amy, the one often seen as the quietest of the Redford siblings, had inherited much of his introspective nature, but also his ability to rise to the occasion when it mattered most. In those final weeks, Robert's children gathered around him, not just as their father, but as a legend who had shaped their world. Jack and Kelly had their own moments of reflection, but it was Amy who seemed to truly understand what needed to be done. She had watched her father rise from the ashes of his past, and now she was determined to give him the one last performance that would define his legacy. Through it all, the Redford family remained united by love, loyalty, and the unspoken knowledge that they would carry Robert's spirit forward. It wasn't just about the movies he made or the accolades he received. It was about the man he had become, the father who had fought for his family, and the legacy he had left behind. Robert Redford's legacy is far more than a series of iconic films and awards. It's a story of resilience, reinvention, and impact that has shaped not only Hollywood, but the entire cultural landscape. Redford's career spanned decades, and while he's celebrated for roles in classics like Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, The Sting, and All the President's Men, his influence reached far beyond his acting prowess. His work as a director and founder of the Sundance Institute, which championed independent cinema, left a lasting imprint on the film industry and filmmakers who followed in his footsteps. But what made Robert Redford's legacy truly unique was his ability to reinvent himself, to never settle for the comfort of being a Hollywood star. He continually sought depth in his work and purpose in his life. Beyond his acting, Redford was a passionate advocate for environmental causes, an entrepreneur who gave a platform to underrepresented voices in film, and a public figure who never shied away from standing up for what he believed in. His philanthropic work, especially in supporting young filmmakers through Sundance, has created an entire generation of directors, writers, and artists who carry his spirit forward. In many ways, his legacy is found in the opportunities he created for others, people whose stories may never have been told without his guidance. But it was in his personal life that Robert's true legacy was felt most deeply. His children, his family, carried his strength, his wisdom, and his passion. They had seen firsthand the complex man behind the public image, and they understood that, in the end, his impact was never about fame. It was about the quiet moments of generosity, the decisions made out of love, and the lessons passed down. For Amy, his legacy was not just about what he accomplished professionally, but how he showed up for his family. She carried the torch, not because it was expected, but because she knew it was what her father would have wanted. And as she stood by him in those final days, watching the man who had once captivated the world prepare to say his final goodbye, she understood that this legacy, his refusal to fade quietly, his fight to the very end, was something she would carry forward. Robert Redford didn't just change the world of cinema, he changed lives. He taught us all about the power of reinvention, the importance of taking risks, and the value of leaving something meaningful behind. His legacy isn't just in the films he made or the awards he received. It's in the lessons he imparted to those who knew him best, and in the enduring impact of his creative vision. Amy Redford, now standing at the center of her father's final wish, would continue to carry the essence of Robert's legacy with her, not just in the world of film, but in every moment of her life. The Redford name would live on, and with it the spirit of a man who never stopped challenging the world, and more importantly, never stopped challenging himself. Once Robert Redford had made his final wish clear, the weight of it fell squarely on his family's shoulders. Sharon, Amy, Jack, and Kelly all knew that fulfilling Robert's request was no small feat. It wasn't just about putting on a show. It was about making sure their father's final moments were on his terms, and that he went out in the same grand fashion he had lived his life. Amy, though a quiet figure in comparison to her more public siblings, became the linchpin in making this dream a reality. She knew the risks of pushing her father's frail body to perform one last time. Doctors had warned that it could endanger his health, but Amy's resolve was unshaken. She wasn't just honoring Robert's legacy, she was giving him the dignity he deserved in his final moments. The family met in the quiet corners of their home, hashing out the logistics. They had to keep it a secret. Robert's wish was too personal, too powerful to let anyone outside the family know. The world couldn't know, not yet. But within the walls of their estate, they mapped out every detail: which doctors would supervise, which band members would reunite, and what venue would hold the sacred performance. For Amy, it was more than just securing the right people. It was ensuring her father could perform with pride. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes, navigating the complex world of medical clearance and artist management. Her goal wasn't just to make the performance happen, it was to ensure it was the kind of grand gesture Robert would have wanted. Powerful, raw, and unforgettable. This wasn't just a final concert. It was a chance for Robert to reclaim his voice one last time. Robert Redford's final farewell was a mix of bittersweet emotions. In those last days, his family gathered around him, aware that this was the final chapter of his life. Despite his frail health, Robert's unwavering will to perform one last time was clear. For Amy, watching her father, once larger than life, struggle with illness was heart-wrenching. Yet she saw in him a quiet strength that had never faded. The day of the performance arrived, and Robert, barely able to stand, was wheeled onto the stage. The audience erupted into cheers, unaware of the physical battle he had fought to be there. Amy's heart swelled with pride and sadness as she watched her father reclaim his moment. His voice cracked with age, but the passion in his delivery was undeniable. For Amy, this wasn't just a performance. It was a final gift to her father, a chance for him to go out on his own terms. As Robert stood before the crowd, there was an unspoken understanding between them. This was goodbye, but it was also a tribute to his incredible life, a moment he had longed for, and finally had achieved. In the days following Robert Redford's passing, Amy found herself standing in the quiet of their family home, reflecting on the man who had shaped her world in so many ways, the man who had been a legend to the world, but to her was simply Dad. In the midst of the grief, she realized that her final gift to him wasn't just honoring his last wish, it was ensuring his legacy would live on, not only in his work, but in the way he had lived his life, and the impact he had made on those closest to him. Amy's tribute to her father was deeply personal, a quiet reflection of everything he had taught her, his resilience, his passion, and the way he had always pushed boundaries in his work and personal life. But above all, it was his love for his family that had defined him. Even in his final days, he never lost sight of what mattered most: his children. His wish to be remembered for his fire, not his frailty, resonated deeply with Amy, who had seen her father rise time and time again, even when his body had failed him. In the days that followed, Amy was overwhelmed by the flood of tributes from fans, colleagues, and friends. But for her, the true tribute to Robert was more intimate. It was in the quiet moments, the shared stories, and the memories of a man who had loved with all his heart. Amy knew that her father's legacy wasn't just in the films he made or the accolades he received, it was in the love he gave to his family, and that was the most enduring tribute of all. As Robert Redford's legacy continues to reverberate through the world of cinema and beyond, his final moments remind us of the true power of resilience and love. He was not just a Hollywood icon, a filmmaker, or a legendary actor. Robert Redford was a man who lived with purpose, who fought for what mattered most, and who refused to go quietly. His legacy is not simply in the movies he made or the roles he played, but in the values he imparted to his family and the lessons he passed down to generations of filmmakers and fans alike. For Amy Redford, fulfilling her father's final wish was both a gift and a responsibility. It was a way to honor the man who had been both a father and a figure of extraordinary strength in her life. Amy's commitment to ensuring Robert's last performance was a testament to her love for him and the incredible bond they shared. It was more than just a concert. It was a celebration of his life, his spirit, and the impact he had on everyone who knew him. In the end, Robert Redford left this world as he had lived, on his own terms. Through his family, his work, and the enduring legacy of his passion, Robert's presence will continue to be felt for generations to come. His fire never dimmed, and as Amy Redford carries his legacy forward, it will remain a beacon for all who continue to be inspired by his story. If you've been touched by Robert Redford's life, his legacy, and the strength of his family, take a moment to reflect on your own legacy. What do you want to leave behind? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this tribute, don't forget to share it with others who remember Robert Redford's unforgettable impact on the world.